Hi everyone, welcome into the Irish NFL show. We are getting closer and closer to the season starting, and it's great to have everyone with us. Great to have Mark Cockrell back, who was looking very busy there just a wee second ago. It was good timing, Mark, but look, great to have the squad back ahead of the new season. The NFL season for the 2022 season starts September the 8th, the Bills against the Rams, and September the 11th is the first NFL Sunday of the season. In this episode, we are going to talk about the most prized division in football, the AFC South, the Tennessee Titans, the Indianapolis Colts, the Jacksonville Jaguars, and the Houston Texans. If you're listening on the podcast, thank you very much. You can get us on YouTube as well. Irish NFL show to see our lovely faces because we're all so awake and excited. I'm buzzing to talk about this column. Let's kick it off. Let's talk about the Titans. The Tennessee Titans, the number one seed in the AFC last season. Many Titans fans believe they are being underlooked now, then, forever. It's a huge year for the quarterback and a huge year for Mike Vrabel. What are your thoughts on this team as they enter the 2022 NFL season?
I think they'll look back on last year as an enormous missed opportunity to get the number one seed and then go out as they did. And you heard Tannehill talk about he still has nightmares about it. Yeah, I can see why, because it was there for them, given what we saw the Bengals do, given what we saw the Titans were capable of at times last year. They made no sense, right? They lost to the Texans at one point. Obviously, they lost Derrick Henry, but they kept going. To me, look, this is about Mike Vrabel more than anything. He is incredible. Like, his ability to adapt to the any given situation. So he's the key. But losing AJ Brown hurts. Obviously, their D-line wreaked havoc last year, and I think if they are to have a good season, that's going to be so important. Again, Jeffrey Simmons, I think the NFL world woke up to him last year, but there are others. To me, Vrabel is the key, but I cannot see how this Titans team right now is as good and let alone better than it was this time last year.
Yeah, Vrabel might be great, but I'm not sure the fans would have the same view of their GM, John Robinson, who traded away their prized asset outside of the running back in the draft on draft night in AJ Brown, and they brought in two wide receivers in the first and in third round. Trading Brooks first round, Kyle Phillips in the third, and essentially they're saying to these two guys, right, you're going to step up immediately. You're going to be part of this offense. They brought in Robert Woods from the Rams, who, in fairness, was having a great season before he got the ACL injury in November, and obviously it benefited around because he had Odell Beckham in the background. But is he going to be right? It's too many question marks for me. Henry got injured in week 8 last year. He has been prone over the years, and is it any surprise he's the battering ram and essentially he's the main man in the offense? You look at the offensive line, it's a bit, there's not a lot of players in terms of the backup. They lose a couple of players, whereas the players to step in. And I think I've aired my views so many times on the show about how I feel about their quarterback. I think he, in the big games, I look back to playoffs over a few years, and okay, they had that win when they went into Baltimore and they won in the playoffs. But then you look at the years thereafter, they lost in Kansas City in the championship game. I think then Baltimore went in and beat them in Tennessee just last year, where the Bengals went in and beat them, and he's just not consistent enough for me. He's a good quarterback in his own right, but he's not at that top level for me to get that team over the hump. And once they might make the playoffs, I don't believe they'll be in any position to go to the playoffs. Defensively, yeah, they've had some injuries. I mean, Kenneth Farley, who was the first round pick the previous year, didn't even see enough of him last year. Dupree was injured. Took a chance on him. He had injuries, came back. Yeah, we saw that big night in LA where they came alive, and that defense can come alive. But I just don't think there's enough of a rounded team for me to go all the way to the Super Bowl. And I'm concerned whether they'll even have the season they had last year in terms of making the playoffs.
Jesus, number one seed being condensed to the dustbin pretty quickly, the dustbin of history. Treylon Burks is going to be a star. I hear it. Let's have some positivity for the Titans. Treylon Burks is going to be amazing. He looks great. He plays football. That's a bit of an obvious thing, but he looks like he's born to play football, and that he will. Not in year one. You can't just replace AJ Brown like that and trade him to the Eagles. Obviously, it was a big move by John Robinson there, but he will produce for the Titans. Like, positivity there. Derrick Henry's going to be back. He's going to be fully healthy, fully recovered. Come on, Titans. This is going to be great. This is going to be fine. And let's remember, they've won their division the last couple of years. Vrabel has had them playing some great football into January and February for the most part. Last season exempted, obviously. So there is a lot to like, and there's definitely a lot to like about that defense. I mean, we can talk about the Colts having a great defense, and we'll talk about them shortly, and they've had a very good defense. The Titans, however, last year at times were amazing. Towards the second half of the season, they looked like they had problems with their secondary at the start of the season, but they tightened up significantly, and of course, even in the game they lost, with 9 sacks, a playoff record number of sacks, the line wreaked havoc, as Colin rightly alluded to. But the problem is, as the guys are alluding to, it feels very strongly like what the Titans have done during the offseason is tread water or maybe slightly drop back. And the reality is, when you look at the rest of the AFC, everyone else seems to have loaded up on guns and called their friends. And the reality is, therefore, have they slipped further behind the Bills of this world, the Chargers of this world, the Chiefs of this world? Yes. Even in this division, look at what the Colts have done now in vastly upgrading their quarterback position. And so the challenge in the division is going to be real for them. Titans fans, are you being overlooked? Have you been overlooked? Probably. Are you going to be overlooked again? Yeah, definitely. They're not going to have enough. It's going to be a drop back for them this season. And it's because actually of the business during the offseason as opposed to the talent of their head coach in particular.
I mean, they're definitely football players. I'll give you that. The good to have you back, man. The question mark. If you had to give one team a big fat question mark and put it all over the field and paint it, and you can see it from a drone or a plane above, it's at Nissan Stadium, and it's with the Tennessee Titans. I don't know what to think about this team this year. Like, an 18-game season with a fully fit Derrick Henry, we're talking over 2,000 yards rushing. Because Ryan Tannehill, and I agree, Treylon Burks has the serious potential to be an explosive playmaker at the wide receiver position in this league. It's going to take him time. It could take him 12 to 18 months to get to that level. It's a massive gamble to trade away AJ Brown and then put that pressure on that wee lad's shoulders. Like, sound like a granny saying that. I think the most intriguing story of this year is Ryan Tannehill. If you take the quarterbacks in the AFC, and we've done a preview without going into detail on the AFC West, for example, where does Ryan Tannehill stack up? In 12 months' time, the Titans can get rid of Ryan Tannehill, or they can go for another year and they can see the crack. What do they do? I don't think Malik Willis comes in this year at all, don't get me wrong, but I just don't know if Ryan Tannehill is the lad to take this Titans team over the edge. I'm also concerned about the cornerback room for the Titans. It's quite light. Is Vrabel going to have to rely on this defense in certain positions on maybe unproven rookies or players that might struggle a bit? That's an issue for me. The special teams needs improving as well. But the funny thing is, and you sort of said, this is the team that ran the ball 551 times last year. They could come out and do that and do grand. And we could be looking like idiots in 6 months' time. But they might not. But one thing is sure for me, Vrabel's class. I love him. I would love him to coach the team I support. He's great crack. He looks like he smokes 20 Marlboro Reds on the sideline every game. He's not stressed. And I'm getting excited for week 1 now. Big week 1 game for the Titans going up against Brian's Giants, Brian.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch back on the wide receiver piece. I mean, the draft itself this year was highly stacked with wide receivers, and everybody felt it was one of the strongest pool of wide receivers in a couple of years. I mean, we had 3 go in the top 12 in Wilson, London, and Jameson Williams with the Lions trading up. And I feel a lot of teams have looked at last year and how productive Jamar Chase was in his first year. But I think if we roll back to this time last year, what were the expectations for the Bengals? What were the expectations for Jamar Chase immediately to step in and be the wide receiver that we saw last year? And I think that's where I feel for training. I kind of agree with Michael. I feel for training Bucks because straight away you're going to the number 1 seed. The Titans fans, maybe not all of us, feel they'll have the most productive season in terms of being as strong as they were last year. But Titans fans expect them to be challenging again. And the aspiration is going to be there for the team. The GM would expect playoffs. The head coach would expect the playoffs. And it's a lot to put on a wide receiver. And as well as that, now they're even talking about the third round pick being productive as well. So it'd be interesting to see how this offense, and Tannehill is so inconsistent for me. We've seen games, like you touched on earlier, they lost to the Texans. I think in a roundabout way, it's a kind of a nice game for the Giants to start. I mean, we've seen teams go in there and knock them off. It's the kind of game no one expects the Giants to beat them. Could they beat them? Could they shock it? Yeah, potentially. Could they get blown out? Yes. Again, ultimately, I think it depends on how Derrick Henry starts. But I don't expect the wide receivers to be hotting things up so early in the season.
Rush back to the end of December last year, and a new year, start of January this year, a new year was beginning, and the Indianapolis Colts were going to Jacksonville, and all they had to do was win. And by God, did they up. Jesus, lads, that is bad. Really, really bad what happened. And we've seen Jim Irsay what he done afterwards, and we've had the great opportunity to talk to Chris Ballard on the show in the off-season. Great lad. 9-8 last season. This is the thing, right? So the Colts, Colin, the Colts bring in Matt Ryan. I don't think there's any team in the league this off-season, maybe bar the Broncos in that position, but looking at what the Colts had outside of Matt Ryan, they've really improved themselves in the sense of bringing in a guy that is such a high caliber quarterback when he plays well.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things around Matt Ryan is the maturity that he will bring. I think one of the issues, right, that if you read between the lines, right, you can see a lot of stuff. And Carson Wentz had actually some good moments last year, and he wasn't turning the ball over as much as in his last year with the Eagles. But what we constantly seemed to come out was Carson Wentz was uncoachable, right? He wouldn't listen, and he had that kind of entitled frat boy attitude, and that's all very well if you're winning games, but doesn't work when you're not. And when you go and you lose to the Jags to cost the Colts the playoff place, well, it's a huge upgrade. And I think Frank Reich and Matt Ryan could be very, very good together. I think Matt Ryan is even potentially a better QB than Phillip Rivers was when he went there. I think Matt Ryan could have a couple of really solid years. I think there's a lot to like in what the Colts have. They need their O-line to stay healthy. Certainly, they have really good pieces on defense, right? They Darius Leonard, Forrest Buckner, they brought in Ngakoue, Gilmore, but is Gus Bradley the right guy to make the most of that? That's probably my biggest concern. And the other thing I would say that stood out to me when we were talking about Derrick Henry is Frank Reich said over the summer that you do not win championships, as in Super Bowls, when you have the NFL's leading rusher. It's not how you win anymore. So as good as Jonathan Taylor is, and he is absolutely incredible, I don't think you'll see him have as many rushing yards this year. They might well use him in the passing game, but that is something I think to keep an eye on.
1,711 yards last year and over 40 receptions. He was the second highest, in terms of receptions in the team. They were so reliant on him. And when there was games where he was taken out, we saw that in that last game. He was taken out of the game, and probably they've left with players such as Paris Campbell, and is he going to make the step up this year? And this was something that we kind of gathered from the interview with the GM Chris Ballard recently, and we've spoke to other people in terms of the Colts fans' view that these players are all kind of recognising the fact how important Matt Ryan is, and that these other players will step up. And Perryman, the second year, I think he's going to his third year now, so he's been really productive. These players have got to step up, got to take the pressure off Taylor. And ultimately, I think Matt Ryan can do that. I think they can put themselves in a position to win the division. I mean, bear in mind, they were only one game off going to the playoffs last year. So as bad as things were last year with Wentz and he was uncoachable, they still came towards the playoffs. And I actually think the Gilmore signing is good. I think people felt he kind of dropped off slightly when he went to the Panthers, but I think he's still got the player. He's still the player that he was within reason from his days on the page. And I think he's kind of played that, not so much about being so productive, but the experience he's had that can help that team trying to get over the hump and win the division.
Michael, I don't want to ruin the rest of this preview, but let's be frank. This is a 2-team division. Like there are other divisions that are competitive. This is a 2-team division. The other 2 teams in this division might as well not exist. Of course, but for the fans, we'll talk about them and we'll talk about how bad they are. Don't worry. But the reality is that there's only 2 teams that can win this division. There's only 2 teams that are in contention to win this division. And one of them has maybe taken lateral or backward steps, and the other has taken a sea change forward. You're right. During the summer, I had Chris Ballard on the show. He's an amazing guest. The reality is he did 2 of the biggest and probably best pieces of business in the NFL during the offseason. One, as you alluded to, bringing in Matt Ryan. The second, getting rid of Carson Wentz. And how he still did that, I don't know. I mean, does he have blackmail photos on people at the Commanders? I still can't understand how quite he negotiated that. That just, he's in the Hall of Fame for that trade of all time. They have done more, and you alluded to it, Mike, and I fully agree. Other than the Broncos, they have done more to upgrade the quarterback position, being the most important position on the field, than anyone during this offseason. That in itself is a sea change forward. Jonathan Taylor is a start. Yes, they didn't have a first-round pick. They've tried to upgrade in the second and third round. They picked Pierce in the second round. Jelani Woods as a tight end in the third round. They double-dipped again in tight end later in the draft. And they'd like to see some production from those picks to give themselves further options. But they've still got a lot of stars on the defensive side. Some of the steps the lads have alluded to can improve. But Matt Ryan, far greater than Carson Wentz. And I'll go as far as to say Matt Ryan's going to have his best season in the NFL since 2016. And that will be enough to make the Colts not only a serious contender in this division, but a serious contender in the playoffs generally.
Bingo. Jonathan Taylor, Colin, I'm bringing this up because I know we've talked a lot about the Cowboys and about Elliott and certain contracts. The average salary for a running back in the NFL, and I know we don't pay running backs, you're not really supposed to, is $16.3 million. Currently, Jonathan Taylor is the 37th ranked running back in the league at $1.957 million through 2024. He is the 774th highest player in the league, and he's an incredible player. That says a lot. I like where the Colts are at. The one issue I have at the minute is I think outside of Pittman, a wide receiver, I think Matt Ryan needs somebody else to throw the ball to. You're asking, Alec Pierce is going to have to take a step up there. But the reality is, last year, there was so much heaviness on the run. We've seen again in the game against the Patriots. I know Mark can only say, Taylor. Now, it's not just Taylor, it's Tinker Taylor. And you get Matt Ryan, who can throw the ball a few times, give Taylor a bit more rest, and allow the team to gel more. I am excited to see how this team is going to play, and I fully agree with what Mark is saying. Down the line, you could be looking at Darius Leonard having a star game come the middle of January or towards the end of January. If the Colts stay healthy, I think the Blank family in Atlanta need to take a very, very good look at themselves. Who's next?
They need the offensive line to stay healthy.
Yes.
We spoke about it tonight, the team's revamping offensive lines. We've seen Matt Ryan unfortunately be destroyed, with his time with the Falcons because the offensive line was so erratic. If we get a situation where there's injuries, we could be seeing the Matt Ryan who struggles and throws interceptions. But
yeah. Let's run at the next team. We've got the Texans. The Texans column, Davis Mills, as of the time of recording, is the starting quarterback in Houston. Lovie Smith has been the head coach of the Houston Texans from around the same time Mark disappeared off the interweb. So I'm going to give you week 4. I'm going to keep bringing these things up. I'm joking. So it's an interesting year for the Texans. My issue column is Lovie Smith is a good guy for this team short term. I just don't really see what the long-term play is there, but this team really seemed to like him. He's done a lot already for Houston. He, in my opinion, is a good coach, a good head coach, maybe one that might have been respected a bit more in Chicago, but Chicago, I don't know, lads. We'll talk about them in the NFC North preview.
Yeah, no, Lovey's talented, but they treated David Culley appallingly. Okay, I went on my infamous rant about the Texans last year, and yeah, they won 4 games, but the run game was the worst in franchise history. They had the worst total points differential in franchise history, and they hung it all on David Culley, a man who acted with nothing but dignity and respect in what was a horrible situation for him. The Texans had their part to play, and they have made payments this offseason to rid themselves of what was the stench, and they've moved on from their former QB, and they will hope to leave that behind them. To me, this season for the Texans is really about finding out who is there for the future. And I always feel for fans of teams when they're doing that, because ultimately, you know, they're paying a huge amount of money to support their team. They put so much into it, and the team is kind of treading water a little bit. It's all about, like, is Davis Mills going to be a franchise QB? At times last year, you could say he was probably second best of the rookie QBs. Yeah, he had some really poor games, but most of the rookies did. And I think it'll be really interesting to see what he can go on to do. The other interesting thing for me, and Mark may or may not be aware of this, he loves the giant tight ends. And the Texans have 2 tight ends who are both 6'6" and over 250 pounds. So there's plenty for Mark to enjoy in those 2 guys. I think the Derek Stingley Jr. will be the high point, that they will be hoping that he can have a Patrick Surtain-like season.
Yeah, it was unusual, I suppose, how Derek Stingley came up the board, because for so long he was injured, and he was challenged whether he'd be ready to be ready for training camp, and then he goes 3rd pick, and then they take Kenyon Green with another pick in the 1st round. But there's an interesting player they've taken now of Alabama, Messi, the wide receiver, and ultimately I think this is what this season's about. It's about these players that are going to come in, they're going to try to gel them and see what they can get out of these rookies, because I mean, we've seen all the players who have any ability to move on from the Texans, so it's a rebuild year. And yeah, Cuddy's unfortunate. I suppose when Cuddy got sacked, I understood to a certain degree, because I felt that there was better head coaching opportunities out there, but then to obviously keep someone in-house, and Lovie Smith's okay in his own right, he's probably a good head coach, but to keep someone in-house, it just didn't make sense for me. But they seem to be gradually moving on. We had Sean Prendergast on from local radio in Houston a number of times on the show, and he's been very kind of high on the way things have been run now. He thinks they've moved on from the Deshaun Watson era. So it's going to be a difficult year, but I still think with a little bit of positivity and a little bit of light towards the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, he's a good head coach. He coached the Chicago Bears to a Super Bowl. Like, let's not throw him, out with all the dirty nappies, shall we say. He's been out of the game for a little while, obviously, after being at the Bucs, but he's a talented head coach. Colm, I agree entirely, though. Do the Texans deserve him? Do they deserve anyone the way they treated David Culley last year, and they've been run as a franchise for the last while? There's still a lot wrong in Houston, and fans of the Texans will also acknowledge that with the continued influence of Jack Easterby, for example, there's a lot to be fixed still. That being said, they brought in Nick Caserio, and the rebuild still hasn't kicked in yet. See how some of these young talents perform. I'm really interested to see Nico Collins. I actually think he'll have a bit of a breakout year opposite Brandon Cooks, who still continues to be a very, very good wide receiver. But the sale still hasn't finished. Laramie Tunsil, I reckon, will get traded out. I reckon they still haven't burnt it all fully to the ground yet before they build it back up. And they are relying upon Caserio to deliver that from a GM perspective, and probably, and possibly, and probably likely a new coach even at the end of the season, because it doesn't feel like they're committing to Lovie Smith long term, and maybe they'll treat him as badly as they treated David Culley. This is a team still in flux, still in development, to say the least, dealing with the past mistakes of previous regimes, and they have a long way to go. And they're not as bad as Colm's infamous rant at the Aviva start of the season last year, but they're not very good either. And that's part of their challenge.
I am looking forward to seeing the Texans give Lovie Smith a chance if he can turn this team into over 4.5 win team. he should be given another year. He might not be, but that's a different conversation for a different point in the season. It's difficult. There's a lot of winnable games on the schedule for this team. There is. I'm not going to name the teams because I don't want to annoy people not listening or being here or whatever, but there are. The reality is it doesn't really matter because they need to find a way to improve every position. It's not about winning for them this season. Obviously you go out to win a game, but they want to find a way in which they can sit in February or in January and say to themselves, well, we improved here. For example, the quarterback with Davis Mills, but we really need to focus more on our special teams or our defense. And that's the major issue for the Texans this year. So for them, I think that's vital. I like Brandon Cooks. Will he be there come week 4? I don't know. Will he be there come the time this goes out? I don't know. But I'd like to see them improve because I feel that the fans deserve a lot more than what they've had with Cully and stuff previously. So we'll see what happens. And apparently, Brandon Cooks signed a contract. So that's good. I love the internet. I love chats. Let's have a chat about the Jacksonville Jaguars. Another year, coming to London in October. And Colin, Trevor Lawrence, this is his debut season in the NFL, yeah? Because last year didn't count with that complete clown as a head coach.
Yeah, it's 8 months since Urban Meyer moved on, and everybody is still delighted. South Park, bigger, longer, uncut reference there. Yeah, look, my rant was rendered, I suppose, a little bit useless last year because the circus was truly in Jacksonville. I mean, I don't think we get the full extent of just how bad the Urban Meyer experience was. I think that will come out in the fullness of time. But he was kicking players. He didn't know their names. He didn't know guys' positions weeks into the season. It emerged, and I don't think people wanted to believe it when we were saying it, that he wasn't in the dressing room giving out the game balls after that victory in London. And people were incredulous. They were like, that can't be the case. And lo and behold, and even over the past couple of weeks, as players have taken to the podium in Jacksonville and talked about the experiences, more and more has leaked out. So yeah, I agree. You cannot take anything that happened last year at face value. It's a new start for Trevor Lawrence, except, he gets a gimme and he gets the experience that he had last year. This is about seeing what Trevor Lawrence can do. This is about seeing what EDN can do. Hopefully he can stay fit. They've brought guys in, obviously Trayvon Walker. Let's see. There's lots of intrigue around the Jags, and I really don't think, this is not probably, the Jags are not going, I don't believe, to the playoffs, but are the Jags capable of doubling their number of wins from last season? Yeah, and then some, potentially. I mean, I think the Jags could realistically be a kind of a 7-8 win season. And if they have that, and if Trevor Lawrence has shown that he can be the guy, he has to show that. This is a guy who is talked about as the next generation talent, the next Andrew Luck, the next Peyton Manning, the next John Elway. He needs to show what he can do, and that's what this season is about.
I don't think Lawrence could have any excuses come the end of the season, no matter what the circumstances of the season. You bear in mind what he's done in free agency, and he got a lot of criticism because people felt he overspent on players. Christian Kirk got the monster contract. They brought in Evan Ingram from the Giants, Treadwell, the wide receiver, Zay Jones, the wide receiver. Etienne is back fully fit this season after missing out on last year. They put weapons on the team, and then you look at the offensive line. Brandon Sheriff's come in, a couple of players from the NFC East experience, and that's kind of reflective of the head coach who's coming in, so he understands players, and he's been around that division for a long time. But me and Colin were forced to speak to two beat writers recently from the Jags, and the one overarching message was the fact that the head coach, never mind what's happened in the past, they've got a really good, strong head coach in there who's won the Super Bowl, who's delighted to be back in the league. He's also got a point to prove after the difficult ending in which he had in Philadelphia when he threw that game. So, he's going to make a point. Will they be better? They will. They've also brought in a person on defense. So, I think overall things are going to improve for Jacksonville. I actually see them in around 5 to 6 games. I know that sounds like not a lot, but bear in mind they've been the first round pick for the last couple of years. things can only improve. But I think it will be exciting to watch the Jags this year. I think we're going to see some really exciting games. I think the offense and Lawrence are going to be a little bit more action-packed than what we're used to seeing.
I love the way Brian just throws in there, when he threw that game, just siles it into the DMs effectively there. Actually, I didn't address Colum's point about me liking big men. Last year, we were at the Dolphins-Jaguars game, and I couldn't get over just the size of Mike Gesicki at the Dolphins. Like, he came to the podium. It's a massive man. It's a huge man. But one of the other things we did see there is we saw those Jaguars up close and personal. And we did see the craziness of Urban Meyer, but equally the talent of Trevor Lawrence and the way in which he leans into that franchise player. I mean, signing autographs all the way around the stadium before the game kicks off. He's playing that franchise, that face of the franchise kind of role. Obviously, given the Jags lean into London, it's kind of like, well, he gets it. He gets what his role is. He also needs more talent around him, and Christian Kirk's agent should negotiate the next salary negotiations for ourselves, for everyone of our family, because he clearly is doing an amazing job in terms of getting the best possible value out there. But the big problem was they had no talent, they had no targets, they had no capability. They've done a job of improving that, as Brian alludes to. Travis Etienne's coming back from IR, and we were excited to see him last season when he was drafted and the connection him and Lawrence would have and how they bring that into the league. So it's a fascinating experience to see what they can do in a non-Urban Meyer type of environment. And there is hope, obviously, in how it evolves and develops, but there's not enough there yet. There's a reason they were still the number one pick this season. And there's a long road to recovery back. Can I see them improve up to 6-7 wins maybe? Yes. Can I see them being a logical threat for this division? No.
I think for me, the thing with Trevor Lawrence is, if you go back and watch his tape in college, there's situations in college where he looked like he could be an elite quarterback in the NFL. Of course he did, because he went, in the draft first pick, this elite talent, everyone's talking about him, and then everything happened last year. What Doug Peterson needs to do is he needs to find a way to evolve Lawrence's game around some sort of offensive skill set that allows him to evolve as a quarterback and evolve as a player, and allow that to take time. Now, I personally think that might not take that long. You're bringing in Christian Kirk. Forget about the money situation. You're evolving the offense. You're evolving the offensive line to suit Trevor Lawrence. I think they go over 6.5 wins in this division. I think they're going to be massively improved this season, and I'm excited to watch them. I think it's a good time to be a Jaguars fan. So, and that's one thing I think Colin mentioned as well. We haven't even seen the running back of Etienne. I can't even pronounce his name. So that's one thing as well. This is a lad. He'll go for 1,200 yards rushing this year. Put that in tandem with Lawrence firing it down the field at 10 to 8 in the Sunday night hour time in red zone. I'm telling these boys, watch out for the Jaguars. Something tells me I could be crying in October in London. Right. Colin, would you like to go first with your predictions for this division?
Yeah, for me, this is the Colts are going to win this division for the first time since 2014. Jim Irsay has almost demanded that, and I think he will get his wish. The Titans will finish second. The Jags will jump above the Texans. They will finish third. And unfortunately for the Texans, they will be bottom of the pile. But it will be, at the end of the season, is Davis Mills the guy for them or not?
I will keep it moving on to Mark, because I fully agree with Colin on all four selections. I say finishing in that order. I would go as far as to say, if they don't win the division, the Colts, I think the head coach's position might be under threat next year, because this owner, who was very quick off the mark last year when the season ended to get rid of the quarterback, when essentially it wasn't really his decision, might say it differently this year if he feels he's put the players around this head coach and GM. I was really supported the GM and he supported the head coach. Will we see that head coach return if they don't make the playoffs? They should be in the playoffs, at least as a wild card, but I would agree that I think they've enough to win this division this year.
Generally, when Jim Irsay demands something, it happens. Like, he's demanded plenty of rule changes in the NFL over the time, and the league has complied with his demands in that regard. So if he's demanding a divisional title, you can be sure that the Colts therefore are commanded to address that demand. I think it's going to be super close between them and the Titans. It's very possible, and I don't want to demean the Titans. As I say, when we went through it, I just feel that they've taken a little bit of a step back. They've taken lateral moves more than anything, and the Colts with the Ryan acquisition are going to take a leap forward. So Colts and Titans, again, as I said, the only two teams I think have a hope of winning this division, followed by the Jags, then the Texans.
We have a full house. Yeah. I think the Jags will be a bit better than what some of us have said here. I do expect the Titans to take a step down this season. But they're not stupid enough to fire Vrabel, are they? Really? They wouldn't be, would they? Right, that's it for the AFC South preview. If you're a Titans fan, you're pissed off or annoyed at this, comment on this YouTube video, because this YouTube video is probably going to be titled "Why the Tennessee Titans Will Miss the Playoffs This Season." So let us know what you think about us and our show, and please do like, subscribe, comment. Really appreciate it, folks. On YouTube means an awful lot to us. Believe me, it does. It really, really does. Podcast, please subscribe. Please give us a rating. Apple, Google, Stitcher, Amazon, wherever you see our big bakes on the screen, please do it. At IRENFL on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, the works, lads. We're flying here. And big thanks to Cassidy Travel for the continued support, the travel partner of the Irish NFL show. Search Cassidy Travel on all social media formats and on your search provider to find out really, really cool and extremely good value trips from Ireland to the USA for the NFL. Until next time, Michael McQuaid, Colin Cronin, Brian O'Leary, and Mr. Mark Cockrell, it's Slogafile and keep her lit. Goodbye.